All right. I will now the meeting is now resumed. I want to ask if Mr. Tam could repeat your question. It's still 3 minutes. May I begin now, Chairman? Yes, Mr. Tam Shin Kwok. Well, I see that at the presentation, innovation is put at the top priority. Innovation is very important, and the government said that there would also be different uses for the different INT zone, and the He-Tao Cooperation Zone will become one of the most important innovation cluster. And Santin Technopole would actually be an important hub, and there would actually be support for the production lines. I would like to ask the government whether Santin Technopole could actually be incorporated into the He-Tao Cooperation Zone so that the 87-hectare He-Tao Cooperation Zone could then be expanded. And so it will become a larger He-Tao zone together with Shenzhen. And together there would be better synergy created for the integrated development of upstream and downstream industries. I'm also in full support of the development of the NM University Town. What strategies would you adopt to try to attract more top universities to come into Hong Kong? Well, 2 questions, one on innovation and one on education. Ms. Chang, please. Thank you. Thank you for Mr. Tam's question. Mr. Tam is correct in that that there is a strong connection between the loop and also with Santin Technopole. So a loop is one of the very important parts and also an important support for the national plan in developing in innovation and technology. So we want to see both hard and soft communication in terms of logistics and other sorts of communication. We hope we'll be able to leverage on the competitive edge of He-Tao to become an area with strong edge. Therefore, we are going to try to attract more top enterprises to come in to do research. At the same time, there is another very large advantage in that the loop will be supported by the Santin Technopole, and so we would have an actually very comprehensive line. So from upstream, midstream, downstream, and all together, we'll be able to come up with a full comprehensive production line. And when necessary, we'll be able to extend cross-boundary services from the loop to the Santin Technopole, and that will really help us integrate into the GBA planning and development. Thank you. Well, on the question of education, Mr. Shi, well, thank you for your question. Well, you asked how we are going to attract well or top renowned universities to come into the university town. So that would actually be led by one of the working groups, which is under the Committee on Development of the Northern Metropolis. We will continue our communication with top universities on our planning and development. And actually, universities in Hong Kong, especially, we have 5 universities amongst the top 100, have always been closely connected with other universities. They work together in research, in student exchanges. There is a very strong connection for tertiary institutions and seminars, we are able to invite top university professors to come into Hong Kong. We are very confident, and there are already well-renowned universities overseas that have expressed their interest in moving into the northern metropolis.
Next, Mr. Lam Chun-sing. Thank you. I read some papers before the meeting, and the papers show that 2 years ago the CSTB came to this panel saying that they would reserve some land at the Khao Yi Chau official islands for large-scale cultural facilities as well as the largest museums in Hong Kong. Last year, however, the government said within the current term, there won't be any reclamation works to take forward the Khao Yi Chau projects. There isn't a timeline for that particular project. While the Khao Yi Chau project will not be taken forward yet, we still need the cultural facilities planned. Will they be put in the northern metropolis instead? This is just one example. I hope the Development Bureau can tell us more about this. Previously, the government said very certainly that they would move on with the Khao Yi Chau project. They even came up with conceptual plans. So my question is, for long-term facilities that are important to the development of Hong Kong, will they be moved to the northern metropolis instead? I hope that these facilities will not be affected just because the government decided not to carry on with the Khao Yi Chau project. Now, before we continue, I have to extend this meeting by 15 minutes. I'll invite Mr. Raislin Lau from the CSTB to respond. Well, let me clarify. At the end of 2024, we came to this panel to brief members about the planned cultural facilities. Back then, we were talking about the two new development areas. We said that in both the northern metropolis as well as the Khao Yi Chau artificial islands, there would be cultural facility clusters. Now, given the adjustment in our policy direction, we would, of course, work at full steam to take forward the cultural facility projects in the northern metropolis. Indeed, we mentioned in the previous panel meeting that we have already identified a site at Kutong North for building museums to showcase the development of our country. It would take up an area of 3 hectares. Also, at the Sentian Technopole as well as in NT North New Town, there is land reserved for cultural facilities. I believe that we would be able to meet the needs of cultural development in Hong Kong. Professor Priscilla Leung. Thank you, Chair. 2 days ago, on another occasion, I talked about the Hong Shui-Kiu-Shanghai Railway Link. I took part in a meeting in Shanghai, and they said that they only spent about $68 billion for the Shanghai section. The first time the government mentioned about this project was 2003, but then the project was too costly, and the government waited until 2011 to bring up this project again. We are only going to see a tendering exercise in 2027 for this project, and it will be completed after 2030. The construction cost in Hong Kong is too high, and the construction progress is too low. We cannot catch up with the mainland progress. So regarding the dedicated legislation, I think we need specific provisions to relax the relevant restrictions. Can members of the construction sector actually take part in the project to help speed up the construction program? Secondly, I want to say that it's not an easy task to come up with a piece of dedicated legislation for the northern metropolis. For example, can the HALSP take part in this? The government said it would empower the CE in Council to make subsidiary legislations. Well, subsidiary legislations are very different from the primary legislation in terms of their importance. I hope that if you are going to make a piece of subsidiary legislation, you would actually table it to the LegCo so that we can have a chance to discuss this. I think we need respect and communication. I just want to point out that both the primary legislation as well as the subsidiary legislation are equally important. This is because the primary legislation has its binding effect too. Just now, a member said that it hoped the Hong Kong enterprises in the mainland could be allowed to follow the laws in Hong Kong. So I think even the subsidiary legislations would be important. I hope that we would be able to have a chance to discuss the future subsidiary legislations. Secretary. Well, both questions have to do with the dedicated legislation. Internally, the government is working on drafting the dedicated legislation, and this does not only involve the Development Bureau. What should this legislation cover? We have consulted all policy bureaus. If we are to enhance speed and efficiency for the Northern Metropolis project, what should be covered in this dedicated legislation to make sure that the project can go smoothly? To give you an example, we always say that we want to facilitate the flow of capital, goods, data, and people through the Northern Metropolis project. We will definitely give members a chance to contribute their views to this dedicated legislation. A few months later, if we have the draft ready, we would come back to this development panel. And if chairman agrees, other panel members would be invited to the meeting to talk about the bill. After the bill is passed, if there is a need for us to make subsidiary legislations, for example, the subsidiary legislations may have a specific focus, then we will talk to the relevant panel based on the panel's terms and reference. So please rest assured that this is a cross-bureau effort. It is not just the Development Bureau that's working on the dedicated legislation. On speeding up the project, say for example, for the Shanghai Railway project, should we, through the dedicated legislation, remove relevant restrictions to speed up the progress? Well, we may need to relax restrictions to import workers and to introduce a new construction technology. In these regards, we may not necessarily need a new piece of legislation in order for us to achieve this. We can make use of existing legislations. We are currently working with our colleagues from the legal department to see if we can offer enough protection. If not, we will study the possibility of introducing provisions into the dedicated legislation in order to speed up the progress. Members, if you agree, I will extend this meeting by another 15 minutes because 2 other members, including myself, are waiting to speak. Mr. Yu Ming. Thank you, Chair. It is announced by the government that there will be a medical school in Oldtown May, and in Santien there will also be a private hospital. There are about 1.5 million people in Tuen Mun, Tin Shui Wai, as well as Yuen Long, and in the Northern Metropolis there will at least be 2.5 million people living there. Can we have more private healthcare services for the local residents? This is not only to take care of the needs of residents in Tuen Mun, Tin Shui Wai, and Yuen Long. This will also help relieve the burden on public hospitals. Also, this area is close to Shanghai, and perhaps these healthcare services can be provided to those near Shanghai. I believe the hospital will not only serve people in Hong Kong, but also technology personnel from the mainland. Can we speed up the progress of developing this private hospital so that it can serve the local residents as well as the mainlanders as early as possible? Secretary, in terms of the planning of hospitals, well, it's hard for us to sort out all the details now. What is the most important is that we have to ensure there are enough community facilities in the area. As for hospitals specifically, will there be hospitals in Hung Shui Kiu? I will ask the Undersecretary to respond to this question. Or to give you a simple answer, in the eastern side of Hung Shui Kiu, there is a large piece of land reserved for a public hospital, and that will satisfy the healthcare needs of people in the northern metropolis in the future. Next, Mr. Lau Ka-Keng. Thank you, Chair. Paragraphs 12 to 13 as well as paragraph 28 of the government paper state that the Santine Technopole will be an INT hub in the northern metropolis, and it will create synergy with the Hetao Cooperation Zone. The 80% of the floor areas of the first phase of buildings in the Hetao Cooperation Zone have been rented out. As for the Santine Technopole, the land will be rolled out in 2026 or 27, the earliest. Has the government assessed the INT development needs as well as whether it has thought about attracting international top-tier technology enterprises to set up operations in the northern metropolis? Also, paragraphs 31 to 33 of the paper mentioned about the land use in Hung Shui Kiu. How will the Hung Shui Kiu logistics hub create synergy with the logistics hubs in Pearl River Delta? Also, paragraph 32 states that the government will introduce anchor enterprises. So what strategies will the government adopt to attract top-tier and quality enterprises to Hung Shui Kiu? Thank you.
2 questions, Secretary. Well, I'd like to invite Ms. Chung to answer the first question, and then for the logistics cluster, I would invite Mr. Liu to take that question. Ms. Chung, thank you for your question. In the loop and the Santine Technopole, we know that it's of utmost importance that we speed up the development as soon as possible. The Hong Kong part of the Hetao zone has opened up, and there are many enterprises that have already entered the area, about 60 enterprises. Let me first try to give you a timeline. In the loop, well, other than building our own facilities, we have also taken out 10 sites and to invite expression of interest. After collating the views, we are hoping that starting from this year, we will gradually roll out the development in the first phase in a public-private partnership. We estimate that starting from 2026-2027, there would be land shared out to us from the Development Bureau. We will take it in 2 phases. with some service industries, and we would gradually extend our industries to AI, life sciences, advanced manufacturing, etc. I can say that we don't need to be afraid of enterprises moving out during that time, because there is huge attraction for enterprises to come into our area. And with Cyberport, our science park, we do see new space, and we do provide many incentives for enterprises to move into the area. I'm sure that the government will take an industry-driven approach to attract top enterprises to move into the area. Thank you. Mr. Liu. I agree with what Mr. Lau said. In order to be successful as a logistics cluster, we must be able to attract enterprises to come in. We have adopted 3 directions. First is to become enterprise-oriented. Second, to be market-oriented. And then to create a market-enabling environment. We want to attract anchor enterprises to come into the area, and with these anchor enterprises moving in, it would then attract other enterprises to come in to work in the logistics industry. We haven't really restricted what kind of enterprises we want as our anchor enterprises. We are flexible in this. It could be mainland enterprises or local enterprises. As long as they meet our criteria, we welcome them to come into our area. We would adopt a flexible approach to attract anchor enterprises. Well, I also have some questions. The northern metropolis covers 30,000 hectares, showing that there are many rural areas within the metropolis. The society is very concerned with how we can balance urban and rural development, and I'm sure you have heard many views on that. I want to see what kind of survey you have conducted and when you would share the results with the public. Chairman, it is going on smoothly. We hope that by mid-year we'll be able to share our suggestions in mid-2026. But we first want to set a positioning. In the last few years, we have talked about conservation efforts, including the area of Shampo-Shu Wetland Park near Sentin Technopole, and also the Long Valley Park. All these are closely related to the natural ecology. But for achieving a balance between urban and rural development, we have jumped out of the box, because this also leads to historical culture. There's a lot of history in those areas and a lot of cultural characteristics. So we are not only talking about natural ecology conservation, we're also talking about cultural heritage as well. We are in discussion with Hung Yi-Cook and different stakeholders to understand their expectations. So I'm sure that when we finalize our policy, we would have to work on infrastructure in rural areas. There are still a scatter of hiking trails or traditional village houses in those areas. Well, how can we vitalize those old buildings and share their history? Some may still be lived in at the moment, or maybe we can relax the restrictions and allow them to provide catering services. We hope that what we come up with can resolve some of these issues, and we will try our best to bring this back to the LegCo by mid-year. Members, this concludes our discussion today. If there is no AOB, let's adjourn the meeting. Thank you.